Hello, BookTube! Welcome to your Daily Penguin. Our tour through my Penguin Classic wall was going to be part of my library tour in 2019, but we ran out of time, and I started to think maybe that I wanted to give these penguins more attention. And I'm glad that I did. It's been tremendous fun for me. You all seem to appreciate it. And we are right now mining a vein of Penguin Classic Deluxe editions, these ornate, beautiful editions of classics that Penguin has done that they don't have the uniform look of the Black Spine Penguin Classics. Instead, they each look different. They're clearly designed for not so much assigning 30 copies to a schoolroom, but rather buying if you are a big fan of that book, of that you yourself are a big fan of that book. And we have seen recently a couple of Penguin Classic Deluxe editions of novels of Jane Austen. Just a couple, not all of them. I'm pretty sure that all Jane Austen exists as Penguin Classic Deluxe editions, but I don't have them all. I wish I did. It's another function of this Daily Penguin is giving me an idea of the penguins that I don't want and the penguins that I do want. I think it would still end up being a whole wall full of penguins. In fact, probably more so, but maybe not these exact penguins. And today, today's Penguin Classic is one of the only Penguin Classic Deluxe editions that I actually have 2 copies of. Specifically because I worried that I was reading my 1 copy so much that I would wear it out, and I didn't want to be without it. And it's this enormous thing. This is the complete novels of Jane Austen. In a Penguin Classic Deluxe edition that looks like that. It has the French flaps and the deckled edges. And this particular volume has all of the novels and also Lady Susan, all in one huge volume. And this has this taps into an active question of mine when it comes to reading classics, science fiction series, fantasy series, whatever it is. Whenever there is something that tempts an editor to make a collected edition, then I'm always on the fence about what I actually want when it comes to that. Do I want to read an individual volume by an author in a gigantic collected edition? Or am I more in the mood for reading the novel or the volume separately, as its own separate thing? And I go back and forth. I honestly do. I wonder if you do too. There are times when I feel like the giant heft of the whole world of Jane Austen, the crime of this author, the heartbreak of this author, is that you can fit all of her books into one volume. You couldn't do this with Trollope or Dickens. Unfortunately, you can do it with Jane Austen. And then there are other times when I want just one book, just one book as its own separate world. I don't know. I go back and forth. A part of me very much yearns, for instance, for a volume this big of the Elric of Melniboné novels of Michael Moorcock, all in one volume. If it can be done for Roger Zelazny's Amber novels, which it can be, I've seen that volume, then it can be done for the Elric novels. And what I wouldn't give for a big, beautiful Penguin Classic of that. And there are other things, of course. There are other volumes, other books by one author, even that aren't the Jane Austen novels. Very much share a world. They don't ever come out and be explicit about it, but they share a sentiment. They share a worldview. They can very much be read as slivers of the same little continuum. Whereas, for instance, if you were to do a big volume of I don't even know, the novels of Nathaniel Hawthorne. There is a big volume of the novels of John Steinbeck, some of them. And they don't inhabit the same world in anything like the same way here. So I don't know. I'm of 2 minds on this. I maybe not completely 50-50 of 2 minds, because I noticed while I was examining this thing prior to talking to you today, I sort of went back in my memory and realized that more often than not, when I want to read a section of a Jane Austen novel, or if I want to read a whole Jane Austen novel, more often than not, I do reach for this volume, not for the individual volumes. So I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, but this volume has an introduction by Karen Joy Fowler that I want to read from you a bit. Karen Joy Fowler wrote a novel called The Jane Austen Book Club that is wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And that was made into a movie. It was adapted into a movie that is also somewhat rarely wonderful. It's a modern movie, and it's just fantastic. I've recommended it on this channel before. If you have not seen it, especially if you're a Jane Austen fan, then you should. Then you should waste no time in finding it on whatever streaming service it happens to live on, and watching it. And also, if you can, watch the director's commentary because it's amazing as well. But I want to read you just the beginning of this of Karen Joy Fowler's introduction because I think it's really neat. I'm going to stop. I will stop. Let's see here. I'll just do the beginning part of it. Some writers are admired by academics and taught in the academy. The criticism regarding their work takes up many shelves in university libraries. Their books are seen as influential, complex, and important. Other writers are read solely for fun. They are rarely found on assigned reading lists, and their books are often described as transporting by people who like them and escapist by people who don't. Only a handful of writers manage to be both kinds. Jane Austen is among those who occupy the rare intersection of academic and popular culture. Austen's enduring appeal is not easy to explain. Certainly no mere description of her work will do so. On the surface, she is a specialist in all those things that women's fiction has been criticized for over the years. Let's review the list. Number 1, her books are about women. With the possible exception of Northanger Abbey, her women are more interesting than her men. Number 2, she structures all her books around the marriage plot. Martin Amis says, in context that appears to me not meant as a criticism, that she wrote, quote, 6 samey novels about middle-class provincials. Number 3, her focus is domestic. The magic of Jane Austen's novels is more easily located in observation and quotidian detail than in page-turning plot and adventure. Number 4, her presentation is genteel. Her subject matter is decorous. Her prose lacks muscularity. Her plots move as deliberately as her sentences. And number 5, and look who reads her. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, even though how many times I've read that. On hearing this description, one might well ask, perhaps through clenched teeth, how she gets away with this and still retains such respectability, such popularity. Who does she think she is? Or one might, while reading her books, notice how the question simply falls away. Genius is always beyond explanation. If it can be accounted for, if it can even be located, then it never really was genius after all. There is no reason in the world this should stop people from trying. That's the introduction goes on for a couple more pages that way, and the thing that I like most about it is that it serves what I consider to be a main function of the introduction to a volume of canonical literature, or anything really, which is often forgotten in introductions that I see. A lot of the introductions on that Penguin Wall don't fulfill this main function, which is to make you want to read the book it's introducing. a lot of introductions don't do that, and this one does. And then you go on. When that introduction is done, you are introduced into the world of Jane Austen in one big, beautiful volume. And I love it. I absolutely do. I'm not always in favor of that. For instance, in response to a bicentenary or a tricentenary or some tenary of some kind or other about 15 years ago, there was a big anniversary for Charles Darwin. I'm off the top of my head forgetting what the anniversary was, but it caused everybody and their brother to bring out a big volume of Charles Darwin, including The Origin of Species, The Descent of Man, all The Voyage of the Beagle, all the like 6 Darwin books in one huge volume. There were like 5 of them that you could get, 5 of those volumes that you could get from different publishers in your retail bookstore at the time. I worked in a retail bookstore, and I had customers ask me, what on earth is the difference between these volumes? Which one should I pick? And in a case like that, I mean, Darwin is an author where you could assemble his major books into a book about this big, but I would never be tempted to want such a book. And I said that to customers. I said, well, read The Voyage of the Beagle, and if you like the author's companionship on the page, well, then you've got that. Or read, Origin of Species is the book that changed the world. Read that. But you don't need to get this at all. This that has 6 different Charles Darwin books, when 4 of those books are for Darwin fans only. And I think maybe the reason that I love this collection so much is that, with the possible exception of Lady Susan, all Jane Austen's magic works in every book. So it does feel, in a way, of a piece. It does feel more legitimate to put them all in one big volume like this. But this is our penguin for today. it is it is exercising an enormous gravitational pull of temptation on me even as I speak. I have a lot of work to do, a lot of reading to do, a lot of writing to do. I cannot afford a 2 day long digression into Austen land. I cannot afford that. I just can't. So I'm gonna resolutely put this thing back on the shelf, and we will I think be free of Jane Austen tomorrow. I'm pretty sure that our little foray into Austen land is over for the time being. Sooner or later, probably in a week or two, we're going to hit all of the Black Spine Penguin Classic Jane Austen novels, but we'll go through this again. But for now, I think the Penguin Classic Deluxe editions will move on to something else. So I will wrap this up for now, and we will see what we find tomorrow. Thank you, BookTube.